A quick new idea, daily, from the world's greatest TEDx talks. I'm your host, Atossa Leoni, and this is TEDx Shorts. It's time to review your performance or look at your grades, and despite having overwhelmingly glowing feedback, you can only focus on the negative. Sometimes it seems we do this when we scroll through headlines, too. Public policy professor Bobby Duffy argues that media and our brain's bias towards negativity can create big gaps between perceptions and reality. In today's talk, he explains why we must challenge our biases, because there's actually more optimism in the world than we're led to believe.
So I had the pleasure of working for 25 years in understanding people's attitudes and opinions. And about 15 years ago, we did a study on attitudes to immigration, where we also asked a question where we got people to estimate what the actual level of immigration was in Britain. And people were incredibly wrong. It made me think, is it just Britain that's uniquely rubbish at this, or does it happen all around the world? And so that was the start of the Perils of Perception studies. Since then, we've done dozens of studies, over 100,000 interviews across 100 different topics, and up to 40 countries. Very simple premise. We just get people to guess at realities, look at the gap between the two, and then try to understand both why and then what we can do about it. That's kind of the whole principle for it. So the best way to do this is just to ask you the questions, just 3 questions to illustrate 3 different sorts of effects. And this is the first one. So what percentage of women and girls aged 15 to 19 in your country do you think give birth each year? That's what we'd ask. And this was asked across about 30 countries. But let's just do it for Britain, since we're in Britain. Just shout out an answer. What percentage of women and girls aged 15 to 19 in Britain do you think give birth each year? Just shout it out. 5, 15, 8, 10, 20, 3, 0.5. So you really don't have a clue. You're all over. You're all over the place. Well done if you went pretty low in that. It's actually 1.4%. 1.4% teenage girls give birth each year. 2% in the US, 6% in Argentina, but 2% overall around the world. This is a rare event. It's a rare occurrence. But you wouldn't think that when you look at people's guesses, average guesses around the world. These are the average guesses, the mean guess. So 19%, 24%, 37% in Argentina, 37%, and about a quarter overall. So when you think about that, it's slightly absurd. So the question is why? And a big part of it is the vivid emotional stories that we remember. So all those things about us being storytelling animals are true. We are drawn to the vivid and unusual. In this case, so we have an emotional reaction to these types of things. And it means literally that we overestimate what we worry about as much as worrying about what we overestimate. So cause and effect run in both directions. We think something is bigger in our brains because we're worried about it. And because we're drawn to these vivid, unusual stories, that's what the media give us, because they know what we like as storytelling animals, so they give us more of that. We tend to focus on negative information. And this was shown in a great series of experiments by US professor John Cacioppo and his team, where he got a series of images that were positive, images that were negative, measure brain activity to see how intensely and where the brain reacted. And so he had a series of positive images first, which this was an American experiment. So the positive images were things like pizza, and the negative images were things like dead cats. See, it always gets that reaction, a sort of slight repulsion at that kind of idea. We are drawn more to these negative images. And that's like not a dumb fault of our brain. It's actually evolutionary. So when we were cave people, negative information was often threat-based information. So if you didn't act on it, if you didn't act on the warning of the saber-toothed tiger lurking behind the bushes, you were literally edited out of the gene pool. So we are the long line of descendants of successful species that has paid a lot of attention to negative information. So that's how our brains work. So vivid negative stories, unusual stories are unusual. This is the kind of first lesson. Remember that they are unusual. And what that means is things are literally not as bad as you think. The present and future are not as bad as we think. Having said that, there is something more dangerous about our current information environment in terms of reinforcing people's incorrect views of the world. That kind of sense of polarization is a really important factor, that we think we're correct, the other side is wrong, and that's a danger. The world is currently better and getting better than we think. Whenever you show these types of experimental work, it makes you think, God, do we have any control over our thoughts at all when we've got all these biases? But what you see is, when you look into the data, these are average effects. So we're not automatons. We're not determined by these effects entirely. We do have free will. And I see it a lot in my day-to-day work, where we get people together in citizens' assemblies and things like that. And people do take on new information, do change their minds, and do talk across the divides when you get them in the right sort of environment. So we shouldn't be too downhearted about polarization.
The TEDx talk you just listened to was recorded in Liverpool, England. All TEDx events are independently organized by volunteers who believe in TED's mission of ideas worth spreading. Special thanks to the organizing team at TEDxLiverpool. Want to listen to more TEDx talks? Explore the entire archive on the TEDx YouTube channel. I'm Atossa Leoni. Thanks for listening, and see you tomorrow.